Greetings once more, my fellow board game enthusiast, and welcome to part 4 of the Aeon's End lore series. As we already covered all the mage introductions in part 3.5, today I'll mainly be focusing on the story and Nameless from the New Age expansion. So without further ado, let our new tale begin. In the past few decades since the establishment of New Gravehold, the mages have been slowly expanding, setting up various outposts and launching expeditions into the untamed wilds. It was truly a golden age of exploration. The latest expedition to the north was led by the veteran explorer Soskull and his team of breach mages. This included the likes of Rhea, Talix, and several others. For protection against unknown dangers, they carried with them some of New Gravehold's most powerful artifacts. All in all, well-trained, well-equipped team, which made it all the stranger when they missed their deadline to return. The Council of Elders grew increasingly more worried as the days passed with no word from Soskull's team, until at last they decided to launch a search and rescue party. This new party would consist of the best and brightest new breach mages, Claudia, Jagar, Sahala, and Takrin. Following the same trail as the original expedition, the rescue team soon reached the nearby swampland. While trying to navigate their way through the muck, Sahala notices that they were being watched by someone in the underbrush. Without hesitation, she ran towards the figure, with the rest of the team following closely behind. The hiding man instantly began to flee, and though he was too far away for anyone to make out his face, the cloak he wore clearly carried the symbol for the followers of Zaxos. The followers of Zaxos were a group of fanatics who were banished from New Gravehold years ago for trying to follow in Zaxos' footsteps and continuing his research. They mostly consisted of either the reckless or failed breach mages, though the two leaders of the group, Arachnos and Karak, were powerful disciples who had assisted Zaxos in the past. Back to the chase, the fleeing man suddenly shouted, "Release it," while he ran. Moments later, a giant insectoid Nameless, Maggoth, intercepts our group of mages, forcing them to stop and fight it first. Now Maggoth is a horde-style Nameless, summoning dozens of larvae and flies pester the mages, which is rather similar to the Carapace Queen of old. However, this similarity is no mere coincidence. To understand why, you have to think back. Back to the first video in this lore series. Also, there was one more teeny tiny thing that happened. One of the important minions, Broodwomb, was able to hide away from the mages underneath some rubble, avoiding the cleansing before burrowing back up to the surface. I wonder if that will have any future consequences. That's right, people, we have finally arrived at the consequences of Broodwomb escaping all those decades ago. On a quick personal note, this was the single defining moment that got me interested in the Aeon's End lore, as it brought foreshadowing across expansions to a whole new level. Anyways, it turns out that at some point Arachnos had come across and captured the Broodwomb, as it was still just a minor minion living on the surface. Ever since then, Arachnos had been nurturing the minion by feeding it void energy, until it eventually became the fully fledged Nameless, Maggoth. I once again have to hand it to Zaxos, even without being directly present in the story, he still manages to stir up trouble in some way or another. By the time the battle concluded, the man they were chasing had vanished without a trace. Fortunately, the fight had not been in vain, as the sounds of combat had drawn a friendly face to the rescue team's location. It was Rhea, a member of the missing expedition team. Rhea explained that her team got ambushed by a spider like Nameless. Normally, an ambush alone would not have been enough to get the upper hand on such an experienced group, but the spider Nameless had employed cunning tactics that were beyond the intelligence of any regular foe. Soskull, their leader, also got captured while they were trying to retreat, causing a collapse in the chain of command and making everyone scatter in different directions. With no other clues to go by, our party of heroes decides to have Rhea guide them to the site of the ambush and search for other survivors from there. As the journey continued, the swamp was soon replaced by a thick forest. Ever vigilant of further interferences from the followers of Zaxos, the team soon spots a massive swirling breach at the top of a nearby hill. Inching closer, they make out the shape of a humanoid figure kneeling in front of the portal. Well, it would be humanoid, were it not for a bunch of arachnid legs bursting from its spine. Rhea quickly confirms that it is the very Nameless which had ambushed her team. The spider creature suddenly twists itself around and heads towards our party. Now clearly visible, the creature is undeniably human, and as if to confirm this, begins to talk in a shrill voice. The creature asks Rhea why she has returned, and that he simply wishes to finish his experiment in peace. Yeah, in case you couldn't tell by the foreshadowed name, this creature is none other than Arachnos, the disciple of Zaxos. And much like his master before him, rushed experimentation in the pursuit of gaining the power of a Nameless had led to his bizarre appearance. While Arachnos spoke, the portal on the hill briefly waned and opened, revealing Soskull inside, who was clearly still alive and struggling against his spiderweb bonds. Rhea tried to run ahead and save her commander, but Arachnos blocked her way. Left with no option other than to fight, the group of mages engaged him in a fierce battle. It's not long before Arachnos draws his last breath, and the tragedy sets in that he had become the enemy of the very people he was trying to gain the power to protect all along. Though it pained our group of heroes to slay one of their own, they had no time for tears as Soskull was still awaiting his rescue. As Rhea pulled him free, the rest of the group closed the void portal for good. Soskull's breathing is strained and the man is clearly distraught at how helpless he was once captured. It takes a while for him to calm down, but as he does, Claudia notices that Soskull's pupils had disappeared. Upon pointing this out, Soskull realizes that being trapped in the void had filled him with energy. Where once he was but an ordinary man, the sick twist of fate had now given him the power to wield breach magic of his own and stand toe-to-toe with his fellow mages. After gathering his wits once more, Soskull states that he saw Talix flee further up north, and urges the rescue team to head in that direction as well. The journey continues for a couple more hours before Rhea spots something odd. There was an old man who had collapsed by a tree. Were it not for a distinctive chain the man carried, none would have realized that this was in fact Talix. From his still conscious lips, Talix whispered a warning of danger. While still pondering how Talix had suddenly aged 50 years, Tarkin noticed from the corner of his eye that the forest leaves were slowly disintegrating. He beckoned everyone to turn toward this strange occurrence, and as they did so, they witnessed a skeletal creature approaching from the distance. Enter the ageless walker, a Nameless who brings death and decay to all it touches. Simply being close to it will drain your very life. However, the ageless walker wasn't always a Nameless. He used to be called Karak, the second leader of the followers of Zaxos. You might have thought that Arachnos had undergone a failed experiment with his spider Nameless fused form, but at least he was still himself. Karak had been the first human to volunteer for the ritual of obtaining a Nameless power, and it went far worse for him. The ritual had straight up killed him and turned his corpse into a Nameless who attacked indiscriminately. Even Arachnos, who performed this ritual on his friend, had to flee from the abomination he created. Eternal rest came at last to the ageless walker as he was slain by our party of mages, who began to realize that the followers of Zaxos were much more numerous and dangerous than they originally thought. Their victory came with some additional joy though, as the Nameless death had caused Talix to regain both his youth and boisterous attitude. After celebrating their reunion with a couple of friendly hugs and pats on the back, the three expedition members reconciled their tales and confirmed that no one else from their group had survived. As somber truth as it was, it also meant that the rescue mission had come to an end. All that was left was to safely return to New Gravehold. But things are never that easy, are they? The party of mages had barely begun their journey back when they stumbled upon a giant paw print. Shortly after, snow began falling, which then turned into a blizzard mere moments later. From the edges of their vision, the party spots 6 glowing eyes, followed by a mind-shattering howl. as the final Nameless emerges. Fenrix, the Ice Wolf, jumps into the fray. Believe it or not, this Nameless is yet another creation of Arachnos. The once regular wolf had been captured and used in his earlier experiments before Arachnos moved on to human trials. That means that in some way or other, all 4 of the Nameless fought during this campaign were created by Arachnos. That's arguably more trouble than even Zaxos had caused. Anyways, Fenrix proved to be the fiercest battle of the lot, and by the time it was all over, the very landscape had changed. What was once forest had since been blown into a clearing of sorts. Immediately after their triumph, Commander Soskel calls for a well-earned rest. Everyone agrees and sinks to the ground in exhaustion. Silence returns to the forest once again. Or it would have been silence were it not for a rhythmic banging noise. Rhea soon uncovered that the sound was originating from behind a trapdoor in the ground, which got unearthed by the previous battle. Everyone quickly leaps to their feet again in anticipation of the dangers that could lie beyond this door. Rhea slowly pulls on the door and it creaks open, revealing an underground bunker with a massive metal figure inside. What could only be described as an armor-covered flame lifts a hefty hammer before bringing it down on a sword being forged atop an anvil. The armor appears to be friendly enough and introduces itself as Lost. The mages try to question Lost, but it appears his mind has been damaged. All he recalls is that he was once a man living in Gravehold and can forge weapons with breach magic. Okay guys, I think we can safely scratch Adelheim off the list of MIA characters from the previous video. Who once was lost has now become, well, lost. Moving on, our party of mages invite Lost back to New Gravehold, which he graciously agrees to, bringing nothing but his hammer and pet squirrel Meek along with him. Upon returning to New Gravehold, the party reports all that they found to the Council of Elders, who thanked the rescue team for accomplishing their mission as best they could. With the decimation of the followers of Zaxos and the addition of a mighty new weaponsmith, things seem to end on a rather positive note overall. Suddenly, the entrance hall doors are slammed open as a flustered Inko rushes inside. The work of a breach mage is never done, but that, my friends, is a story for another time. Bonus lore drop. For those who've been paying attention, you'll have noticed that other than Maggoth at the start, the Nameless have been appearing in reverse order of their creation. The proper order of escalating events begin with Arachnos and Karak taking up Zaxos' research, resulting in their subsequent banishment from New Gravehold. While in exile, Arachnos began experimenting with glyphs in order to transfer energy from the void into living beings. He made great strides after capturing the Broodwomb and turning it into Maggoth, but that was already a minion of the void from the start. Subsequently, he used animals, which resulted in the creation of Fenrix, and finally humans, which initially failed with Karak becoming the ageless walker, and partially succeeded with Arachnos gaining the power of Nameless while warping his appearance. But did you know, prior to Fenrix, Arachnos had used a rabbit as test subject until it was lost to the void when a breach it was unexpectedly closed. Now this might seem like just another minor detail, but who knows what consequences it could have in the future.